The information provided in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Auto glass repair and replacement involves handling specialized materials, chemical resins, and structural components of a vehicle that are critical to occupant safety. This content does not constitute professional mechanical, legal, or insurance advice. Every vehicle is different, and improper repair techniques can lead to structural failure, airbag malfunction, or personal injury. Viewers are strongly encouraged to conduct their own due diligence, consult with certified technicians, and review their specific vehicle manufacturer guidelines and insurance policies before attempting any repairs. The creators of this content are not responsible for any damages or injuries resulting from the application of the information presented herein. Imagine you are driving down a highway at 65 miles per hour. A pebble the size of a pea kicks up from the tire of a semi-truck in front of you. It hits your windshield with a sharp, sickening crack. At first, it is just a tiny star-shaped blemish, barely the size of a dime. You think to yourself that you will get to it eventually. But then you hit a pothole, or the sun beats down on the glass for 3 hours while you are at work. And suddenly, that tiny star has branched out into a jagged lightning bolt stretching halfway across your field of vision. In that moment, your windshield is no longer a window, it is a structural liability. Most drivers do not realize that in a modern vehicle, the windshield provides up to 60% of the structural integrity of the cabin in a rollover accident. It is also the backstop for your passenger side airbag. If that glass is compromised, the very systems designed to save your life could fail. Today we are pulling back the curtain on the multi-billion-dollar auto glass industry to answer the high-stakes question. Can you actually fix this yourself for $15? Or are you gambling with your life to save a couple $100? This is not just a tutorial. This is a deep-dive masterclass designed to navigate the confusing intersection of DIY culture, professional engineering, and insurance bureaucracy. For the average American driver, a cracked windshield is an inevitable headache that usually results in a frustrating choice. On one hand, you have the big-box retail shelves lined with DIY repair kits promising professional results in 20 minutes. On the other, you have specialized glass shops and mobile technicians claiming that anything less than a $300 professional service is a recipe for disaster. This video solves that dilemma by breaking down the physics of glass failure, the chemistry of polymer resins, and the hidden costs that insurance companies do not want you to calculate. By the end of this series, you will know exactly when a chip is a simple 10-minute fix, and when it is a red alert situation that requires a certified master technician. To understand why this choice matters so much, we have to look at historical trends in automotive engineering. 30 years ago, a windshield was largely just a piece of glass held in by a rubber gasket. Today, it is a sophisticated piece of technology. Modern windshields are often equipped with ADAS, or advanced driver assistance systems. These include the cameras and sensors that power your lane departure warnings, automatic emergency braking, and adaptive cruise control. When you choose between a DIY kit and a professional, you are not just choosing who applies the resin. You are choosing who is responsible for the calibration of the sensors that keep your car from drifting into oncoming traffic. We are going to examine case studies where improper DIY attempts resulted in optical distortions that blinded these sensors, leading to system failures that were far more expensive to fix than the original crack. Let us look at the potential outcomes of the DIY route. The appeal is obvious. You go to a local automotive parts store, spend roughly $12 to $20 on a bridge answer-wrench kit, and follow a set of instructions printed on the back of a cardboard box. In an ideal scenario, the resin fills the air pockets of the chip, cures under UV light, and the blemish becomes nearly invisible. This is the success story that fuels the DIY market. However, historical data from glass technicians suggests that the failure rate for first-time DIY users is significantly higher than most people realize. The primary issue is not the kit itself, but the environment and the preparation. If there is a single microscopic speck of dirt, a trace of moisture, or a hint of glass cleaner residue trapped inside that chip, the resin will not bond properly. Once that resin is cured, there is no second chance. You cannot unrepair a windshield. If the DIY fix fails or looks like a blurry mess, a professional technician often cannot go back and fix it because the path for their high-viscosity resin is now blocked by your cured, low-quality DIY material. In many cases, a botched $15 DIY repair necessitates a full $500 windshield replacement. Now, consider the professional perspective. A professional repair is not just about the tools, it is about the vacuum pressure and the resin quality. Professional-grade injectors can pull a much deeper vacuum than a plastic DIY syringe, ensuring that every microscopic fissure of the brake is evacuated of air before the resin is injected. Furthermore, professionals use different types of resins based on the temperature and the type of brake, whether it is a bullseye, a star brake, or a combination. They also have the equipment to crack out a brake, which involves drilling a tiny, precision hole to reach the center of the impact point. This level of granularity is where the value truly lies. We will be exploring the chemical composition of these resins, and why the stuff you find on a retail shelf often yellows or shrinks over time when exposed to the intense UV radiation of the American Southwest or the freezing cycles of the Northeast. We also need to talk about the financial reality of this decision for the US audience. Many drivers avoid professionals because they fear the cost or the impact on their insurance premiums. However, historical trends in the insurance industry show a different story. In many states, comprehensive insurance coverage includes full glass or no-deductible glass repair. This means the insurance company would rather pay a professional $60 or $80 to fix a small chip now than pay $500 to $1,000 to replace the entire windshield 3 months from later when the crack spreads. By attempting a DIY fix, you might actually be spending your own money to do a job that your insurance would have paid a professional to do for free. We are going to dive deep into the specific language you need to look for in your policy, and how to talk to an adjuster without accidentally flagging your account for a premium hike. Throughout this masterclass, we are going to use real-world data to compare the longevity of these two methods. We will look at thermal stress tests where repaired glass is subjected to extreme temperature swings, simulating a car heater hitting a frozen windshield in a Minnesota winter. The results often reveal the hidden weakness of DIY resins, which may have a different coefficient of thermal expansion than the glass itself, leading to the repair popping out or the crack reopening. This is the level of detail necessary to make an informed decision because at 65 miles per hour, good enough is a dangerous standard. We are here to ensure you have the technical knowledge to assess the damage, understand the risks, and choose the path that keeps your vehicle safe and your wallet intact. This is the definitive guide to auto glass integrity in the modern age. The cost of ignoring a tiny chip often becomes apparent at the most inconvenient moment possible. Imagine a driver in Chicago named Sarah in January 2026. She has a small, barely noticeable bullseye crack on the passenger side of her late-model SUV. She decides to save $80 by using a retail DIY kit she bought online. She follows the instructions, but she does one thing wrong. She performs the repair in her driveway when the temperature is 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Because she does not have the professional-grade heat lamps or the climate-controlled environment of a glass shop, the resin never reaches the correct viscosity to penetrate the microscopic fissures of the brake. To the naked eye, it looks fixed. But as she drives to work the next morning and blasts her defroster to clear the ice, the sudden thermal shock hits that trapped air pocket. The glass expands at a different rate than the partially cured resin, and within seconds, a 3-inch crack shoots across her dashboard. What started as a $12 DIY experiment just became a $1,200 replacement bill because her vehicle is equipped with a camera-based lane keep assist system that requires a full recalibration of the safety suite. This scenario highlights the first major pillar of our deep dive, the physics of thermal expansion and structural bonding. Automotive glass is not a single slab of material. It is a sandwich. Specifically, it is a laminated safety glass consisting of 2 layers of glass with a polyvinyl butyl, or PVB, inner layer. When a rock hits your windshield, it usually only breaks the outer layer. The goal of any repair, whether DIY or professional, is to replace the air inside that break with a clear polymer resin that mimics the refractive index of glass and restores structural integrity. However, the success of this bond is entirely dependent on the purity of the environment. In a professional setting, technicians use specialized vacuum pumps that create a near-perfect seal over the impact point. This is not just to push resin in, it is to pull air out. Even a tiny microscopic bubble of air acts as a point of high stress. Historical trends in laboratory testing show that a repair with as little as 5% air retention is 40% more likely to fail under thermal stress than a high-vacuum professional repair. Step 1 in the professional process involves a detailed moisture test. This is a step almost every DIYer skips. If you have washed your car or if it has rained within 24 hours of the repair, there is a high statistical probability that moisture is trapped inside the crack. Water is the enemy of resin. Since water does not compress and does not bond with the polymer, any moisture left in the crack creates a barrier. A professional technician will use a specialized moisture evaporator or a dry-out tool to ensure the glass is chemically bone-dry before the first drop of resin touches the surface. In a DIY scenario, most users simply wipe the glass with a paper towel and proceed. This trapped moisture eventually leads to clouding, where the repair turns a milky white over time, permanently obstructing your view and making the glass look worse than before the repair. Let us look at a case study involving a 2025 sedan in Phoenix, Arizona. The owner, Mark, attempted a DIY repair in the middle of a July afternoon. The surface temperature of his windshield was likely hovering around 150 degrees Fahrenheit. When he applied the DIY resin, the extreme heat caused the resin to cure almost instantly before it could fully penetrate the legs of the star brake. This created a surface seal that looked successful from the outside, but left the internal structure of the crack hollow. 2 weeks later, while driving on a bumpy rural road, the vibrations of the vehicle caused those hollow internal cracks to leg out. Because the surface was already sealed with cured resin, no professional could now get fresh resin into the brake. Mark was forced to replace the entire windshield. This is a common outcome when the chemistry of the resin is not matched to the environmental conditions. Professionals use different viscosities of resin, measured in centipoise, depending on the ambient temperature and the age of the crack. A thin resin is used for tight, fresh cracks to ensure deep penetration, while a thick resin is used for older, larger chips to provide better structural filling. The second pillar of this masterclass is the hidden complexity of modern vehicle sensors. In 2026, the average new car sold in the United States features at least one camera mounted directly behind the rearview mirror, looking through the windshield. This is the heart of the advanced driver assistance system. If you perform a DIY repair and leave even a slight distortion or a ghosting effect in the glass, you are essentially putting a smudge on the lens of your car's eyes. Potential outcomes of a misaligned or distorted camera view include phantom braking, where the car suddenly slams on the brakes because it perceives a shadow as a solid object, or a failure to detect a pedestrian in a low-light situation. Professional glass shops now invest tens of thousands of dollars in static and dynamic calibration equipment. After a repair or replacement, they run a diagnostic to ensure the camera's field of vision is pixel perfect. When you go the DIY route, you are bypassing this entire safety verification process. We must also address the misconception regarding insurance. Many U.S. drivers believe that filing a glass claim will cause their premiums to skyrocket. Historical data suggests that most major insurers in the United States treat glass-only claims as non-fault incidents under comprehensive coverage. In fact, many policies specifically waive the deductible for repairs because it is a proactive safety measure. If you have a $500 deductible, you might think you have to pay that to get a chip fixed. In reality, your insurance company might pay 100% of the professional repair cost because they know that if that chip turns into a crack, they will be on the hook for a $1,500 replacement. This creates a scenario where the free DIY kit is actually the most expensive option because it costs you time and risk, whereas the professional service could have been covered entirely by your existing policy. Think about the longevity of the materials involved. DIY kits often use a generic, one-size-fits-all acrylic resin. While these are cost-effective to manufacture, they are susceptible to UV degradation. Over a period of 12 to 18 months, these resins can shrink or turn yellow. When the resin shrinks, it pulls away from the edges of the glass, creating a new microcrack that can catch the light and create a distracting glare at night. Professional-grade resins are engineered with UV stabilizers and are designed to match the expansion coefficient of automotive glass exactly. This means as your car sits in the sun and the glass expands, the resin expands with it, maintaining the seal and the structural integrity for the remaining life of the vehicle. As we move deeper into this masterclass, we need to look at the point of no return. There is a specific threshold where a repair is no longer a viable option, and a full replacement becomes a legal and safety mandate. Most people think as long as the crack is smaller than a dollar bill, they are safe. But that is a dangerous oversimplification. The location of the crack is actually more important than its size. If a chip is in what technicians call the acute area, the space directly in front of the driver's eyes, a repair is often prohibited because even a perfect fix can cause a slight optical distortion that interferes with depth perception. But how do you measure these zones accurately, and what happens when a crack reaches the edge of the glass? In the next part, we are going to break down the 6-inch rule and reveal the hidden structural black zones, where a single chip means your windshield is effectively a ticking time bomb. You will see exactly how a crack at the very edge of the glass can compromise the roof crush strength of your entire vehicle. The area where your windshield meets the frame of your vehicle is often referred to by industry experts as the black zone or the frit. If you look closely at the perimeter of your windshield, you will see a band of black ceramic paint that transitions into a series of small dots. This is not just a decorative choice. It is a critical engineering component. This ceramic frit provides a rough surface for the urethane adhesive to bond the glass to the metal frame of the car. It also protects that adhesive from ultraviolet radiation, which would otherwise degrade the bond over time. However, this area is also the most high-tension part of the glass. Because the glass is rigidly bonded to the steel frame, any vibration from the road or twisting of the chassis puts immense stress on the perimeter. If a rock hits your windshield within 2 inches of the edge, the potential outcomes are significantly more severe than a hit in the center. Historical trends show that edge chips have an 80% higher probability of spreading into a full-width crack within the first 48 hours compared to center-of-glass impacts. Consider the case of Michael, a commuter in Denver in early 2026. Michael was driving his electric sedan when a small stone nicked the very edge of the glass, right on the black frit line. Because it was barely visible against the black background, he ignored it. That night, the temperature dropped to 5 degrees Fahrenheit. In the morning, Michael turned on his cabin preconditioning to warm the car. The thermal gradient between the freezing exterior and the rapidly warming interior created a massive amount of tension at the bonding point. Because the chip had already compromised the structural integrity of that edge, the glass had no way to distribute the stress. By the time Michael walked out to his car, a crack had already sprinted 12 inches across the glass. This is the structural reality of the black zone. In this specific area, a DIY repair is almost never recommended by professionals. The resins used in DIY kits often lack the tensile strength required to hold together a high-stress edge impact, and the shear pressure required to inject resin into a tight edge crack can actually cause the crack to spread instantly during the repair process itself. Beyond the edge, we have to look at the 6-inch rule, which is the standard benchmark for repairability in the United States. Most professional technicians use a bridge tool that can comfortably bridge a crack up to 6 inches long. Why 6 inches? It comes down to the physics of the laminate. As mentioned earlier, your windshield is a sandwich of glass and plastic. When a crack exceeds 6 inches, the 2 layers of glass begin to move independently of one another at a microscopic level. The structural tension that holds the glass in a curved shape begins to dissipate. If you attempt to use a DIY resin on a 10-inch crack, the resin might fill the gap, but it cannot restore the tension. Historical trends in automotive safety testing indicate that once a crack reaches a certain length, the glass loses up to 30% of its original structural capacity. In a 2026 safety study, vehicles with unrepaired or poorly repaired long cracks showed a measurable decrease in roof crush resistance during simulated rollover events. Imagine if you are involved in a collision where your vehicle flips. In a modern car, the windshield is responsible for supporting up to 60% of the roof's weight in a rollover. If the glass is compromised by a long crack, or if a DIY repair has failed to properly bond the layers, the glass can shatter and fold inward, allowing the roof to collapse into the cabin space. This is why the choice between a quick fix and a professional assessment is so vital. Professional shops use high-viscosity resins specifically engineered for long crack repair, which have a higher concentration of solids to provide more structural reinforcement. Even then, many reputable shops will refuse to repair a crack longer than 6 inches if it terminates at the edge of the glass, as the risk of structural failure is simply too high. We also have to discuss the acute area, which is the segment of the windshield directly in the driver's line of sight. This area is roughly the size of a standard sheet of paper, centered over the steering wheel. Safety standards governed by the American National Standards Institute, or ANSI, and the Auto Glass Safety Council, or AGSC, have very strict guidelines here. Even a professional repair will leave a tiny scar or a slight optical distortion. Imagine driving into a setting sun or against the bright headlights of oncoming traffic in rainy conditions. If you have a DIY repair in your acute area that has not been perfectly leveled, that small blemish can catch the light and create a starburst effect, momentarily blinding you. Case studies from highway safety investigations have linked several nighttime accidents to driver distraction caused by poorly executed glass repairs that created ghosting images or glares in the field of vision. This is why many insurance companies will mandate a full replacement if the damage is in the acute area, regardless of how small the chip is. Let us look at the technical process of a professional crack stabilization versus a DIY attempt. A professional technician will often use a technique called a stop drill. They use a high-speed diamond-tip bit to drill a tiny, precise hole at the very tip of a crack. This relieves the pressure point and creates a clean circular void for the resin to fill, effectively stopping the crack from moving further. A DIYer rarely has the equipment or the steady hand to perform this. Without stop drilling, a long crack is essentially a living thing. It will continue to grow every time you hit a bump or experience a temperature change. Furthermore, the vacuum pressure cycles used by professionals, alternating between sucking air out and pushing resin in, ensure that the resin reaches the microscopic end of the crack, which is often invisible to the naked eye. DIY syringes rely on simple downward pressure, which frequently leaves the last half-inch of the crack empty, providing a starting point for the crack to continue spreading later. The year 2026 has also brought about new challenges with infrared reflective glass and acoustic laminated glass, which are becoming standard on mid-range vehicles. These specialized glasses have additional coatings or thicker interlayers designed to keep the cabin quiet and cool. However, these coatings can react poorly to the chemicals in some generic DIY resins. Potential outcomes include a permanent haze or a delamination of the internal layers around the repair site. Professionals use resins that are specifically tested for compatibility with these advanced materials. When you consider that a specialized acoustic windshield for a modern SUV can cost upwards of $1,500, the risk of ruining it with a $20 kit becomes a very expensive gamble. We are entering an era where the windshield is the most complex piece of structural tech on your car. But what happens when the repair is finished? Most people think the job is done once the resin is dry, but for a professional, that is only the halfway point. In the next part, we are going to expose the hidden world of ADAS recalibration. You will learn why your car might suddenly start veering out of its lane, or why your emergency braking system might fail to activate after a simple glass repair. We will go step by step through the digital alignment process and show you the case studies of drivers who saved money on the glass but ended up with a car that was digitally blind. This is the part of the industry that almost no one talks about, and it is the most common reason for post-repair system failures in 2026. To understand why your car might become digitally blind, we must look at the Advanced Driver Assistance Systems, or ADAS, which are standard on nearly every vehicle manufactured by 2026. These systems rely on a front-facing camera mounted on the inside of the windshield. This camera is the primary sensor for your automatic emergency braking, lane keep assist, and adaptive cruise control. When you have a chip repaired or a windshield replaced, the optical path of that camera is potentially altered. Even a microscopic shift in the glass or a tiny bit of residue from a DIY repair kit can throw off the camera's alignment by just a fraction of a degree. While a fraction of a degree sounds negligible, at highway speeds, that translates to the camera miscalculating the distance to a lead vehicle by several feet or failing to recognize the edge of a lane. Historical trends in automotive safety data indicate that a significant percentage of ADAS-related malfunctions occur shortly after a glass repair where no recalibration was performed. Imagine a driver in Seattle named James in 2026. James has a modern crossover and decides to fix a small star brake himself using a resin kit from a local big box store. The chip is located just a few inches below the camera housing. He completes the repair, and to his eye, the glass looks clear. However, the DIY resin he used has a slightly different refractive index than the original glass. 2 weeks later, James is driving in heavy rain. Because the resin is not an exact optical match, it creates a slight prismatic effect when water coats the windshield. His car's lane departure warning system begins to vibrate the steering wheel repeatedly, because the camera is seeing a double image of the lane lines. This is a classic case of optical interference that a DIY kit cannot account for. In contrast, a professional technician uses resin specifically formulated to match the light-bending properties of automotive glass, and more importantly, they follow the repair with a digital diagnostic. The professional recalibration process is a high-tech masterclass in precision. There are two primary types: static and dynamic. In a static recalibration, the technician places the vehicle in a specialized bay with a perfectly level floor and specific lighting conditions. They set up physical targets, large boards with specific geometric patterns, at precise distances and heights around the car. The vehicle's onboard computer is then put into a learning mode, where it uses the camera to look at these targets and reset its internal map. This ensures that the camera knows exactly where the center of the lane is and how to calculate the horizon. If you go the DIY route, you have zero access to these targets or the proprietary software needed to talk to your car's computer. You are essentially hoping that the computer can figure it out on its own, which historical trends show is a risky assumption. Dynamic recalibration is even more involved. This requires the technician to drive the vehicle at a specific speed on a road with clear lane markings for a set period, often 15 to 30 minutes. During this drive, the car's computer is busy processing millions of data points to align the camera with the real-world environment. If the road is too curvy, if the weather is poor, or if the lane lines are faded, the calibration will fail. Professional shops in 2026 use handheld tablets that plug into the vehicle's OBD2 port to monitor this process in real time, ensuring the car confirms that the camera is 100% synchronized with the braking and steering systems. Potential outcomes of skipping this step include the car failing to brake when it should, or worse, braking suddenly when there is no obstacle present because the camera perceived a shadow as a solid object due to a distorted repair. Let us examine a case study from a national safety board involving a fleet of delivery vans. The company attempted to save costs by having their own maintenance crew perform DIY glass repairs on dozens of vehicles. Within 6 months, they noted a 15% increase in minor front-end collisions. Upon investigation, it was discovered that the DIY repairs had left subtle halos in the glass. Under certain lighting conditions, these halos caused the forward collision sensors to lag by a few milliseconds. In the world of automotive safety, a few milliseconds is the difference between a close call and a totaled vehicle. This highlights why the professional route is not just about the glass, it is about the software integration. Step by step, the professional workflow for an ADAS-equipped vehicle is rigorous. First, they perform a pre-scan to check for any existing fault codes in the vehicle's system. Second, they perform the glass repair or replacement using high-viscosity, optically clear resins. Third, they clean the camera lens and the interior surface of the glass with specialized lint-free wipes to ensure no fingerprints or dust particles interfere with the view. Fourth, they perform the recalibration, either static, dynamic, or both, depending on the manufacturer's requirements. Finally, they perform a post-scan to provide a digital certificate of completion, which is often required for insurance compliance and liability protection. When you choose a DIY kit, you are skipping steps 1, 3, 4, and 5. You are essentially performing a surgical procedure on your car's eyes without any of the diagnostic equipment needed to see if the surgery worked. We also have to consider the legal and insurance implications of ADAS. In 2026, if you are involved in an accident and it is discovered that your windshield was repaired or replaced without a documented recalibration, you may face significant hurdles with your insurance claim. Many U.S. insurance providers now require a proof of calibration before they will close a glass claim. If you performed a DIY repair and then got into an accident because your lane keep assist failed, the liability could potentially shift to you for failing to maintain the vehicle's safety systems according to manufacturer specifications. This is a massive hidden risk that the back of a $12 repair kit box will never mention. Furthermore, the complexity of the glass itself is increasing. Many 2026 models feature head-up displays, or HUDs, which project your speed and navigation onto the windshield. These windshields have a special wedge-shaped interlayer to prevent ghosting or double images of the display. If you apply a generic DIY resin to a chip in a HUD-equipped windshield, you risk creating a permanent blurry spot in your digital display. Professionals have access to specific resins and polishing techniques designed to maintain the surface integrity of these high-end glass types. The potential outcomes of a botched HUD repair range from a minor annoyance to a completely unusable display, necessitating a $2,000 glass replacement that could have been avoided with a professional touch. But what about the tools themselves? If you have ever looked at a professional glass repair bridge versus a plastic doughy suction cup, the difference is staggering. In the next part, we are going to go into the laboratory to look at the chemistry of the resins. We will reveal the secret ingredients that make professional resin bond to glass at a molecular level, and why the retail stuff you buy in a tube is often closer to superglue than it is to actual automotive glass. You will see the results of a 3-year weathering test that shows exactly what happens to a DIY repair after it spends 2 summers in the Florida sun and 2 winters in a Michigan garage. The visual difference between a 3-year-old professional fix and a 3-year-old DIY fix is something every car owner needs to see before they make their choice. To understand why a professional repair lasts for the life of the vehicle while a DIY fix often fails within a year, we have to look at the molecular level of the materials involved. Most people assume that all clear liquids in a repair kit are essentially the same. In reality, the difference between a $20 retail tube and a professional-grade resin is the difference between a temporary adhesive and a permanent structural polymer. Automotive glass is composed of silicon dioxide, and for a repair to be successful, the resin must not just fill the gap, it must achieve a chemical bond with that silicon. Professional resins utilize what are known as silane coupling agents. These molecules act as a chemical bridge, with one end engineered to bond with the inorganic glass, and the other end designed to bond with the organic resin. Historical trends in laboratory testing show that without these specific coupling agents, a resin is merely sitting in the crack like a plug in a hole, held only by friction and weak surface tension. Imagine a driver named David in Orlando, Florida, in the summer of 2026. David drives a high-efficiency electric vehicle that he bought used. The previous owner had performed a DIY repair on a small star brake on the driver's side. At the time of the sale, the repair looked acceptable. However, after 3 months of the intense 2026 Florida sun, the DIY resin began to undergo a process called photodegradation. Because retail-grade resins often lack high-performance UV stabilizers, the ultraviolet radiation from the sun began to break the chemical bonds of the polymer. The repair turned a dull, translucent yellow, and more importantly, it began to shrink. Laboratory case studies on retail resins show a shrinkage rate of up to 3 to 5% over 12 months. In David's case, this shrinkage caused the resin to pull away from the edges of the glass. This created a microscopic air gap that reflected light directly into David's eyes every time he drove toward the sunset. This is the potential outcome of using low-solids resins that are designed for shelf life in a store rather than performance on a highway. Now, let us look at the professional alternative through the lens of a lab weathering test. In a controlled study involving 2,000 hours of xenon arc weatherometer testing, which simulates years of extreme environmental exposure, professional-grade resins showed less than 0.1% shrinkage and zero measurable yellowing. This is because professional technicians have access to multiple resins with varying viscosities, measured in units called centipoise. For a tight, narrow crack, a professional will use a resin with a viscosity of 20 centipoise, which is almost as thin as water. This allows the resin to travel into the absolute tip of the crack via capillary action. For the surface pit, the actual hole where the rock hit, they switch to a high-viscosity pit filler, often around 1,500 centipoise. This material is much harder, reaching a 90 on the Shore D hardness scale, which allows it to withstand the constant scraping of windshield wipers and the impact of road debris without pitting or scratching. A DIY kit, by contrast, usually provides a single mid-range resin. This is a compromise that fails at both ends of the spectrum. It is often too thick to reach the bottom of a tight crack, and too soft to provide a durable surface finish. If you use a DIY kit on a star brake, you might fill the center, but the legs of the star remain empty. Over time, the vibrations of the vehicle and the thermal expansion of the glass will cause those empty legs to grow. Historical data suggests that DIY repairs have a 30% higher chance of recracking within the first 2 years compared to professional applications that utilize multi-viscosity systems. The second major difference lies in the curing process. Glass repair resin is an anaerobic, UV-sensitive material. This means it only hardens when it is shielded from oxygen and exposed to specific wavelengths of ultraviolet light. Professional technicians use high-intensity UV lamps with a specific spectral output, usually around 365 nanometers, to ensure a complete and uniform cure from the inside out. They also use curing film to seal the resin away from the air. Many DIYers attempt to cure their repairs using natural sunlight. In 2026, with fluctuating atmospheric conditions and varying UV indices, relying on the sun is a gamble. If the resin cures too slowly, it can bleed out of the crack. If it cures too fast on the surface but stays liquid underneath, it creates a weak bond that will eventually fail. Step by step, the professional injection process is a masterclass in pressure management. A professional bridge tool is a precision instrument made of stainless steel or high-grade aluminum. It allows the technician to cycle between vacuum and pressure. During the vacuum cycle, the air is literally sucked out of the crack. You can actually see the crack disappear as the air leaves. Then, the technician switches to the pressure cycle, which forces the resin into the vacuum. They may repeat this cycle 5 or 10 times until every microscopic void is filled. A DIY suction cup tool simply cannot generate the necessary vacuum or pressure. It relies on a plastic screw and a rubber seal that often leaks. If you leave even a microscopic bubble of air in the repair, that air will expand and contract with the weather. Potential outcomes include the daisy effect, where the air bubble forces the resin to separate from the glass, creating a shimmering circular reflection that looks like a flower petal inside your windshield. Consider the case of a logistics company in Texas that tracked the performance of their fleet's windshields over a 5-year period ending in 2026. They found that vehicles treated with professional repairs had a 98% success rate, meaning the glass never required replacement for the life of the vehicle. Vehicles treated with DIY kits by the drivers had a failure rate of nearly 45% within 18 months. The cost-benefit analysis was clear. The $60 spent on a professional repair saved the company over $800 per vehicle in replacement costs. This is the data that insurance companies use when they decide to cover professional repairs for free. They aren't being generous, they are following the historical trends of structural longevity. Furthermore, we must address the chemical safety and shelf life. Many retail kits sit on store shelves for months or years. Over time, the chemicals in the resin can begin to separate or partially polymerize inside the tube. If you use an expired or degraded resin, it may never cure properly, leaving a sticky, toxic residue on your windshield that can damage your wiper blades and smear across your field of vision. Professional technicians buy their resins in small batches with strict use-by dates and store them in climate-controlled environments to ensure the chemical integrity of every drop. As we conclude this deep dive into the chemistry of the bond, we have to look at the final aesthetic result. A professional repair is often invisible to the point where the technician has to mark the spot with a crayon just to find it again for polishing. A DIY repair almost always leaves a scar. But why does that scar matter beyond just looks? Comes down to the way light passes through the glass. In the next part, we are going to explore the hidden world of optical distortion. We will reveal how a poorly filled chip can act like a magnifying glass, focusing sunlight into a concentrated beam that can actually melt interior plastics or create a blind spot that hides a motorcycle from your view. We will also dive into the black market of automotive glass and reveal why some replacement windshields are actually dangerous counterfeits that fail the very first time they are hit by a pebble. This is the information that could save you thousands in 2026. Optical distortion is a phenomenon that most drivers do not consider until they are staring directly into a sunset or navigating a rainstorm at midnight. To understand why a poor repair or a low-quality replacement piece of glass is a safety hazard, we have to look at the physics of light refraction. Automotive glass has a specific refractive index, typically around 1.52. This number represents how much light bends as it passes through the material. When a professional technician selects a resin, they are choosing a chemical compound that matches this refractive index as closely as possible. If a DIY kit uses a generic resin with a refractive index of, say, 1.48, the light will bend at 2 different angles as it passes through the repair. This creates a lens effect. Imagine a driver in Austin, Texas, named Tyler in the spring of 2026. Tyler is a software developer who spent a significant amount of money on a high-end vehicle featuring a sophisticated head-up display that projects navigation data onto the glass. After a small stone chip appeared, Tyler used a budget-friendly DIY kit. While the chip looked filled, the resin created a microscopic bulge on the surface and a different density inside the glass. Now, every time Tyler drives at night, the headlights of oncoming cars hit that repair and scatter. Instead of seeing one pair of headlights, he sees a ghosting effect, a second, fainter set of lights hovering just above the real ones. This constant visual noise leads to what optometrists call visual fatigue. Case studies in driver ergonomics suggest that even minor optical distortions can increase reaction times by up to half a second, because the brain has to work harder to process and ignore the visual artifacts. In a high-speed emergency, half a second is the difference between a controlled stop and a multi-car collision. This issue of optical purity leads us directly into the hidden world of the automotive glass black market and the significant differences between OEM, OE, and aftermarket glass. OEM, or original equipment manufacturer glass, is the exact same glass that came on your vehicle from the factory. It features the car brand logo and is manufactured to the automaker's precise specifications for thickness, curvature, and solar protection. OE, or original equipment equivalent, is made by the same companies that make OEM glass, such as Pilkington, Vitro, or Saint-Gobain, but it does not bear the vehicle manufacturer's logo. Then, there is generic aftermarket glass, which is often produced by third-party companies that do not have access to the original digital blueprints of the vehicle. In 2026, the United States market has seen an influx of low-cost, generic glass that often sells for half the price of OEM glass. However, historical trends in safety testing reveal the hidden costs. Generic glass is often produced with wider tolerances. This means the glass might be slightly thinner than required, or the curvature might be off by just a few millimeters. While it may fit into the frame, this slight misalignment puts uneven pressure on the urethane seal. Potential outcomes of using this substandard glass include wind noise, water leaks, and most critically, a failure of the structural bond during an accident. Let us look at a case study involving structural integrity. In a modern 2026 vehicle, the passenger side airbag is designed to deploy upward, striking the interior of the windshield before reflecting back toward the passenger. The windshield acts as a backstop for the force of the airbag. If you have installed a low-quality replacement windshield that was not manufactured to the correct thickness or installed with professional-grade adhesives, the force of the airbag can actually pop the entire windshield out of the frame. When the glass leaves the vehicle, the airbag has nothing to bounce off of, and it fails to protect the passenger. This is why the Department of Transportation requires every piece of automotive glass to have a DOT number etched into the corner. Step by step, every consumer should know how to audit their own glass. Look at the bottom corner of your windshield for the bug, which is the industry term for the permanent etch. You will see the manufacturer's name, the DOT code, and an M number. The DOT code, such as DOT 123, is a unique identifier for the factory where the glass was produced. You can cross-reference this code with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration database to see exactly where your glass came from. If a glass shop is offering you a price that seems too good to be true, check the bug. Many budget shops use glass from factories with historical trends of poor quality control, where the vinyl interlayer, the plastic sandwich in the glass, is thinner than the federal safety standard of 0.030 inches. Another hidden danger in 2026 is the rise of counterfeit logos. Some unscrupulous suppliers have been found etching luxury car brand logos onto generic, low-quality glass to charge OEM prices. These counterfeits often fail in basic impact tests. Imagine if a small pebble, which should only cause a minor chip in OEM glass, completely shatters a counterfeit windshield because the glass was not properly tempered or the lamination process was flawed. This is not just a financial scam. It is a life-threatening safety violation. Furthermore, we must consider the ceramic frit, that black band around the edge. In high-quality OEM and OE glass, this frit is made of a lead-free ceramic paint that is baked into the glass. It is engineered to provide a specific molecular surface for the urethane adhesive to grab onto. In many black market or low-end aftermarket glasses, the frit is simply a cheap paint that can flake off over time. If the frit fails, the adhesive fails. We have seen case studies where windshields in 2026 vehicles have literally slid down the frame during a hot summer day because the cheap paint on a generic windshield melted or detached from the glass surface. The financial implications are also profound. While you might save $200 on the initial replacement by choosing the cheapest aftermarket glass available, you may find that your vehicle's resale value drops significantly. Savvy buyers and professional appraisers in 2026 check for OEM glass as a sign that the vehicle was maintained to the highest standards. If they see a generic brand or glass with visible waves and distortions, it flags the car as having been involved in a potentially major repair where corners were cut. This can result in a loss of thousands of dollars in trade-in value, far outweighing the initial savings. As we wrap up this technical look at glass quality, we have to address the most critical part of the installation process that happens after the glass is chosen. It is not just about the glass. It is about the chemistry of the bond to the car's frame. In the next part, we are going to dive into the world of high-modulus urethanes and drive-away times. You will see why driving your car too soon after a professional installation is just as dangerous as doing a bad DIY repair. We will reveal the secret chemical timers that technicians use to ensure your car is a safe cage once again, and explain why the humidity in the air on the day of your repair can change everything. You will learn the specific questions to ask your installer to ensure they aren't using expired glue that could turn your windshield into a projectile in a collision. The structural bond between your windshield and the frame of your vehicle is facilitated by a high-performance chemical known as autoglass urethane. To understand the gravity of this bond, you have to stop thinking of a windshield as a piece of glass and start thinking of it as a structural safety component. In a modern 2026 vehicle, the windshield is a stressed member of the chassis, meaning it actually helps prevent the car from twisting and bending during normal operation. The adhesive that holds this glass in place is not just glue. It is a high-modulus polyurethane elastomer designed to withstand thousands of pounds of force. However, the efficacy of this chemical bond is entirely dependent on a factor known as safe drive-away time, or SDAT. Historical trends in automotive accidents show that a significant number of windshield retention failures occur because the vehicle was driven before the urethane reached its minimum required structural strength. Imagine a driver in Atlanta, Georgia, named Robert in the summer of 2026. Robert is a busy professional who schedules a mobile windshield replacement in his office parking lot. The technician arrives, swaps the glass in 45 minutes, and tells Robert he can drive away in half an hour. Robert, needing to make it to a high-stakes meeting across town, jumps in his car 30 minutes later and hits the highway. What Robert does not realize is that the specific brand of urethane used by that budget mobile service has an SDAT of 2 hours at 50% humidity. Because Atlanta is experiencing a particularly humid afternoon, the chemical reaction, which is moisture-cured, is happening faster on the surface but remains liquid in the center. If Robert were to get into a collision or even hit a significant pothole at 60 miles per hour, the internal pressure of the cabin could cause the windshield to shift or partially detach. In the event of an airbag deployment, a partially cured bond can fail instantly, allowing the airbag to expand out the front of the car, rather than protecting Robert. This scenario brings us to the chemistry of moisture curing. Most professional-grade urethanes used in the United States rely on ambient humidity to trigger the polymerization process. The molecules in the urethane react with water vapor in the air to create cross-linked chains that turn the liquid paste into a tough, rubbery solid. In 2026, many high-end shops have transitioned to dual-component urethanes that use a chemical activator to ensure a consistent cure regardless of the weather. However, many independent or budget-oriented installers still use single-component urethanes because they are cheaper and easier to apply. For these products, the weather on the day of your repair is a critical safety variable. If you are in a dry climate like Phoenix, Arizona, a standard urethane might take twice as long to reach a safe drive-away state compared to a humid environment like Miami, Florida. Case studies from the Auto Glass Safety Council have highlighted instances where cars were returned to owners in low humidity regions far too early, leading to structural compromises that were invisible to the naked eye. Beyond the glue itself, there is the critical issue of the pinch weld, the metal ledge where the glass sits. Step by step, a professional installation requires the technician to remove the old urethane down to a thin, clean layer. If they use a metal tool and accidentally scratch the paint on that pinch weld, they have just created a site for future corrosion. In the industry, this is often called windshield cancer. Once rust begins to form under the urethane, it expands and lifts the bond. By the time you see rust bubbles appearing near the edge of your glass, the structural integrity of the bond is likely already compromised. A professional technician in 2026 will use a specialized zinc-rich primer on any scratches to prevent oxidation. If you are watching a technician work and you do not see them apply a black primer to the metal frame after removing the old glass, that is a massive red flag. Potential outcomes of skipping this step include a windshield that begins to leak air and water within a year, eventually leading to a total failure of the adhesive bond as the rust eats away the mounting surface. We also need to discuss the difference between conductive and non-conductive urethane. Modern vehicles in 2026 are packed with electronics, including GPS antennas, cellular modules, and rain sensors that are often embedded in or mounted directly against the glass. If an installer uses a standard, carbon black-filled urethane on a vehicle that requires non-conductive adhesive, it can interfere with these signals. Historical trends in luxury vehicle repairs show that using the wrong type of adhesive can lead to persistent electronic gremlins, such as a GPS that constantly loses its position or an auto-dimming mirror that flickers. Professionals use high-modulus, non-conductive urethanes to maintain the electrical isolation required by the vehicle manufacturer. When you are vetting a professional installer, you must ask specific, pointed questions. Do not just ask for the price. Ask, what is the specific safe drive-away time for the urethane you are using today? A reputable shop will be able to tell you exactly how long the car must sit, based on the current temperature and humidity. Ask, are you using a two-step primer system? This refers to the separate cleaners and bonding agents required to prep the glass and the metal. Ask, can I see the expiration date on the urethane cartridges? Urethane has a shelf life, and using expired material is a common way for cut-rate shops to save money. If the chemical components have begun to break down in the tube, the bond will never reach its intended strength. Case studies have shown that expired urethane can remain tacky or soft for weeks, never fully curing into the structural gasket your car requires. Imagine if you are driving your family in a 2026 SUV, and a heavy object falls from a construction truck. Your windshield is designed to take that impact and stay in the frame, protecting the occupants from the debris. If that bond was made with expired glue or on a rusted pinch weld, the entire sheet of glass could simply fall into the laps of the front seat passengers. This is why the technical details of the installation are just as important as the quality of the glass itself. In the United States, Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards, specifically FMVSS 212 and 208, dictate the requirements for windshield retention and occupant crash protection. A professional installation is designed to meet or exceed these federal mandates. A DIY repair kit or a cut-rate backyard installer has no such oversight. As we move toward the final stages of this masterclass, we have to look at the post-installation reality. Even with the best glass and the strongest glue, there are certain things you can do in the first 24 hours that can ruin the entire job. In the next part, we are going to break down the critical post-repair care instructions. You will learn why washing your car too soon can lead to a total seal failure, and why leaving your windows rolled up tight on a hot day can actually blow your new windshield right out of its frame. We will also reveal the truth about those little strips of blue tape that technicians leave on the glass, what they are actually doing and when it is finally safe to take them off. We will explore the hidden physics of cabin pressure, and how a simple door slam can undo hours of professional work. This is the information that ensures your investment stays where it belongs, securely attached to your car. The physics of a vehicle cabin are far more volatile than most drivers realize, especially in the first 24 hours after a professional windshield installation. To understand why a simple door slam can ruin a $1,000 job, we have to look at the concept of pneumatic pressure. Imagine a driver named Kevin in Miami, Florida. In the peak of the 2026 summer, Kevin just had his windshield replaced by a high-end mobile service. The technician used a premium high-modulus urethane, but the chemical curing process, the transformation from a liquid paste to a structural solid, takes time. When Kevin gets into his car to drive home, he rolls up all the windows to blast the air conditioning. As he reaches his destination and slams the heavy door of his SUV, he is essentially acting as a giant piston. In a modern, well-sealed vehicle, that sudden movement of air has nowhere to go. It seeks the path of least resistance, which in this case is the fresh, wet bead of urethane around the perimeter of the new windshield. Historical trends in post-installation failures show that this sudden spike in internal cabin pressure can actually push the windshield outward by a fraction of a millimeter. This creates what technicians call a pressure leak or a channel. While the glass might not fall out, the seal is now compromised. Potential outcomes of this microscopic shift include persistent wind whistles at highway speeds or, more dangerously, water ingress that can slowly drip onto the vehicle's sensitive electronic control modules located under the dashboard. This is why professional installers in 2026 will almost always advise you to keep at least one window cracked open by about an inch for the first 24 hours. This allows the air to escape during a door slam, protecting the integrity of the curing bond. If you see a technician forget to mention this, you are looking at a high-risk situation where the technical success of the install is being left to chance. Another critical element is the blue retention tape. You have likely seen cars driving around with strips of blue or yellow tape stretching from the glass to the roof. In 2026, some customers find this unsightly and peel it off as soon as they get home. This is a significant mistake. This tape is not there for decoration. It is a structural brace against gravity. A windshield is heavy, often weighing between 25 and 40 pounds, and it sits at an angle. Until the urethane reaches its initial set point, gravity is constantly trying to pull the glass downward. This is known as glass slip. Historical data from glass shops indicates that removing the tape too early can result in the windshield sliding down the frame by as little as 1/8 of an inch. While that seems minor, it is enough to misalign the ADAS camera sensors we discussed earlier, and it can leave a gap at the top of the glass where water can pool. Case studies of luxury vehicles with rain-sensing wipers have shown that a slip of just 3 mm can render the sensor completely non-functional. We must also address the temptation of the car wash. In the humid environment of 2026, many drivers want to wash away the dust and fingerprints left behind after a repair. However, high-pressure car washes are the natural enemy of fresh urethane. A standard automatic car wash uses water jets that can exceed 1,000 pounds per square inch of pressure. If that water hits the edge of a new windshield before the urethane has fully skinned over and cured, it can force its way under the bead. Potential outcomes include the displacement of the adhesive or the introduction of soap chemicals that can interfere with the polymerization process. Most professional manufacturers recommend waiting at least 48 to 72 hours before subjecting a new windshield to a high-pressure wash. Even a hand wash at home can be risky if you use a garden hose with a high-pressure nozzle directly on the seam. Step by step, the first 48 hours of post-repair care should be treated as a quarantine period for your vehicle. Step 1. Leave the window cracked. Step 2. Do not remove the retention tape for at least 24 hours. Step 3. Avoid car washes in heavy rain if possible. Step 4. Do not place anything on the dashboard. This last point is often overlooked. Many drivers have a habit of throwing their sunglasses, mail, or a sunshade up against the interior of the glass. In 2026, with the increased use of lighter, thinner glass to improve fuel efficiency in electric vehicles, the interior surface is more sensitive to pressure. If you shove a sunshade against the bottom of a fresh windshield, you can actually push the bottom of the glass away from the urethane bead, creating a leak that will only become apparent the next time it rains. Let us examine a case study involving a commercial fleet in 2026. A delivery company had 3 vans serviced on a Friday afternoon. The drivers, wanting to keep the vehicles clean for the weekend, took all 3 vans through an automated brush-style car wash immediately after the technicians left. By Monday morning, 2 of the 3 vans had developed significant air leaks, and 1 had a visible water stain on the headliner. The cost of the redo work was not covered by the glass company's warranty, because the post-care instructions were explicitly ignored. This is a common legal hurdle in the United States. Most professional warranties are voided the moment the customer fails to follow the documented SDAT and care protocols. Beyond the immediate physical risks, we have to consider the thermal stress of the American climate. In states like Arizona or Nevada, the interior temperature of a parked car can reach 170 degrees Fahrenheit within an hour. This extreme heat causes the air inside the cabin to expand. If the windows are rolled up tight, the expanding air creates a constant outward pressure on the windshield. If the urethane is still in its early curing stages, this can cause the seal to bow outward. This is another reason why cracking the window is not just about door slams, it is about thermal regulation. Conversely, in freezing climates like Minnesota or Alaska, the contraction of the metal frame against the cooling glass creates a different kind of tension. Professional technicians in 2026 use climate-specific charts to determine if a vehicle needs to stay in a heated bay for several hours before being released to the customer. What about the long-term maintenance of your new glass? Most people think the job is finished once the glue is dry, but the way you treat your windshield over the next 6 months will determine if that repair stays clear or begins to fail. We need to talk about the impact of wiper blades. If you install a brand new windshield but keep your old, gritty, torn wiper blades, you are essentially taking sandpaper to your new investment. In 2026, with the rise of hydrophobic glass coatings, the friction between the blade and the glass is higher than ever. We will explore how to properly break in a new windshield, and why the type of washer fluid you use can actually cause your repair resin to degrade prematurely. As we approach the final stages of this deep dive masterclass, we are going to look at the ultimate decision-making framework. We have covered the physics, the chemistry, the digital sensors, and the post-care. But how do you actually weigh the cost versus the benefit for your specific situation? In the next part, we are going to break down the ROI return on investment of professional versus DIY. We will look at the actual dollar-for-dollar breakdown over a 5-year ownership period. You will see why the cheapest option today is almost always the most expensive one by the time you trade the car in. We will also reveal the secret warranty that many professional shops offer but never advertise, the one that could save you from ever paying for a glass repair again. This is the financial blueprint for 2026 that every American driver needs in their glove box. When we analyze the financial blueprint of automotive maintenance in 2026, the return on investment for a professional glass repair versus a DIY attempt reveals a stark contrast that most consumers overlook at the point of sale. To understand the true cost of ownership, we must move beyond the immediate $20 versus $100 comparison and look at the long-tail economic impact. Historical trends in the U.S. automotive market suggest that vehicles with documented, professional service records maintain a significantly higher resale value. When you go to trade in your vehicle at a dealership in 2026, an appraiser is not just looking at the odometer and the paint. They are using high-resolution scanners to check for structural integrity and sensor calibration. If they detect a botched DIY resin fill in the acute area or a non-OEM windshield that has not been properly calibrated, they will often deduct the full cost of a total windshield replacement plus labor from your trade-in value. Imagine a driver in Charlotte, North Carolina, named Marcus. In early 2026, Marcus decides to sell his 4-year-old electric sedan to upgrade to a newer model. He has taken great care of the interior and the battery, but 2 years prior, he used a DIY kit to fix a small crack on the passenger side. To Marcus, the repair looked fine. However, during the dealer's inspection, the technician used a polarized light filter to check the glass. They discovered that the DIY resin had begun to delaminate, creating a microscopic void that was invisible in normal light, but showed up as a massive structural flaw under the scanner. Because this void could potentially interfere with the passenger side airbag deployment, the dealership refused to certify the vehicle as a top-tier pre-owned car. Marcus lost $2,000 in trade-in value over a $15 DIY kit. This is a common potential outcome in a market where safety standards are becoming increasingly digitized and non-negotiable. Let us look at the case study of the hidden professional warranty. Many national glass chains and local independent shops in the United States offer what is known as a lifetime warranty on workmanship and materials. This is the secret weapon for your wallet. If a professional repair fails and the crack spreads, many shops will credit the cost of the repair toward the price of a full windshield replacement. Furthermore, if the replacement windshield develops a stress crack, a crack that occurs due to installation pressure rather than a rock chip, reputable shops will replace the entire unit at zero cost to the owner. A DIY kit comes with no such backup. If your DIY repair fails and the glass cracks across the entire width of the car, you are 100% responsible for the full cost of the replacement, the labor, and the ADAS recalibration. Historical trends in insurance premiums also play a massive role in this ROI calculation. In many states, if you attempt a DIY repair and it fails, necessitating a full replacement, your insurance company may view the subsequent claim differently than if you had gone to a professional initially. Some insurers have clauses stating that they will only cover a replacement if the original damage was evaluated by a certified technician. By bypassing the professional, you might inadvertently be bypassing your own insurance coverage. In 2026, with the rising costs of specialized automotive glass, an out-of-pocket replacement can easily exceed $1,500 for a mid-market SUV. Choosing the professional route ensures that the paper trail is intact, protecting your right to a low-deductible or zero-deductible replacement down the road. Step by step, let us break down the actual dollar-for-dollar comparison over a 3-year period. Year 1. The rock hit occurs. DIY cost is $20 for the kit and 1 hour of your time. Professional cost is $100, but if you have comprehensive insurance, the cost to you is likely $0. Year 2. The DIY resin begins to yellow and shrink due to UV exposure. You buy another kit to try and touch it up, spending another $20. The professional repair remains invisible. Year 3. You hit a pothole during a cold snap. The DIY repair, weakened by shrinkage and air pockets, fails instantly, and the crack spreads 12 inches. You now have to pay for a full replacement. In 2026, this includes the glass at $500, labor at $200, and ADAS calibration at $300. Total 3-year cost for the DIY route, $1,040. Total 3-year cost for the professional route, $0. This is the financial reality that professional glass shops understand, and why they offer free repairs to insurance policyholders. There is also the matter of the secret repair-only shops. These are specialized facilities that do not even perform replacements. They only do high-end restorations of chips and long cracks. These shops often use vacuum injection systems that are far superior to standard mobile kits. While they may charge more than a general glass shop, their success rate in preventing a full replacement is significantly higher. Case studies from fleet management companies show that using these specialized restoration services can extend the life of a windshield by several years, even in high-impact environments like construction or long-haul trucking. For an American driver in 2026, knowing the difference between a replacement shop and a restoration shop can be the key to saving hundreds of dollars in unnecessary glass swaps. We also have to consider the environmental ROI. In 2026, sustainability is a major factor in the U.S. economy. Every time a windshield is replaced, the old glass usually ends up in a landfill because the polyvinyl butyryl interlayer makes it difficult and expensive to recycle. By choosing a professional repair that actually lasts, you are preventing 30 pounds of glass and plastic from entering the waste stream. Some insurance companies are even starting to offer small premium discounts or carbon credits for drivers who opt for high-quality repairs over replacements. This is an emerging trend that adds another layer of value to the professional choice. Imagine if you could avoid the hassle of the glass shop entirely. In the final part of our masterclass, we are going to look at the future of automotive glass. We will explore self-healing glass technologies that are currently in the testing phase for 2027 and 2028 models. We will also reveal the ultimate checklist you should carry in your phone to use the next time you hear that dreaded crack on the highway. This checklist will tell you exactly how to triage the damage in 30 seconds to decide if you are driving a safe car or a rolling hazard. We are going to wrap up everything we have learned, from the chemistry of resins to the physics of ADAS, to give you the final verdict. You will see the one specific scenario where a DIY kit might actually be the right move, and the 9 other scenarios where it is a total disaster. The final conclusion is coming up next, and it will change the way you look at your windshield forever. To understand the one scenario where a DIY kit might actually be a logical choice, we have to look at the fringe cases of automotive ownership in 2026. Imagine a driver in rural Nebraska named Christopher. Christopher owns a 2005 work truck that he uses exclusively for hauling hay across his farm property. The vehicle is not registered for highway use, has no advanced driver assistance systems, and the windshield is already pitted from 2 decades of gravel dust. For Christopher, spending $100 on a professional repair or $1,500 on a replacement is not an efficient use of capital. In this specific context, a $20 DIY resin kit serves a single practical purpose. It acts as a temporary structural adhesive to prevent a small bullseye from immediately spiderwebbing across the glass during the next harvest. This is the only scenario where the risks we have discussed are outweighed by the low utility of the vehicle. However, for the other 99% of drivers, the 9 disasters we have detailed over this masterclass represent a clear and present danger to both safety and finances. Let us synthesize these disasters into a final cautionary framework. Historical trends in 2026 automotive technology show that as vehicles become more complex, the margin for error in glass repair shrinks to near zero. The first disaster is the digital blindness of your ADAS sensors. We have seen case studies where a microscopic shift in light refraction caused a car to think the road was clear when a pedestrian was standing directly in the path of travel. The second disaster is the etch stress failure. A chip in the black zone of the glass is like a crack in the foundation of a skyscraper. It is not a matter of if it will fail, but when. The third disaster is moisture entrapment, which turns your windshield into a cloudy, distorted mess that no professional can later salvage. The 4th through 9th disasters involve the hidden layers of legal and structural integrity. Disaster 4 is the insurance voiding. If you perform a DIY repair and your glass later fails in an accident, your insurer may point to your unauthorized work as a failure to maintain the vehicle to safety standards. Disaster 5 is the massive loss in resale value. As modern appraisal tools can now detect non-professional glass work with high-frequency infrared scans. Disaster 6 is the structural compromise of the roof crush protection. Disaster 7 is the potential for passenger side airbag failure, where the windshield pops out of the frame instead of acting as a backstop. Disaster 8 is the chemical degradation of generic resins that yellow and shrink in the American sun. Finally, Disaster 9 is the catastrophic failure of the bond itself due to the lack of professional-grade vacuum pressure cycles. To help you navigate this in real time, we have developed the 2026 Driver Triage Checklist. This is the 30-second evaluation every driver should perform the moment they hear a rock hit their glass. Step 1 is the credit card test. If the chip or crack is larger than a standard credit card, do not even look at a DIY kit. At this size, the structural integrity of the laminate is compromised, and the vacuum pressure required to fill the fissures is beyond the capability of any handheld plastic syringe. Step 2 is the edge test. If the damage is within 2 inches of any edge of the glass, the tension in the material is too high for an amateur fix. Any pressure applied by a DIY tool could cause the crack to run instantly. Step 3 is the sensor scan. Look at the top center of your windshield from the outside. If you see a triangular or rectangular cutout in the black frit where a camera is located, and your chip is anywhere in the vertical or horizontal line of that camera's view, you must go to a professional for recalibration. Step 4 is the tactile test. Run your fingernail gently across the break. If your nail catches in a deep pit, the surface is open to moisture and dirt. You must cover the spot with a small piece of clear tape immediately. Not to fix it, but to keep it clean until a professional can vacuum it out. As we look toward the future of 2027 and 2028, the industry is moving toward self-healing glass technologies. Laboratory case studies are currently testing biomimetic resins that are embedded into the polyvinyl butyryl interlayer during manufacturing. These microcapsules are designed to rupture upon impact, releasing a healing agent that fills a chip before the driver even realizes it has happened. However, until these vehicles become the standard on U.S. roads, the burden of maintenance remains with the owner. We are also seeing the rise of smart glass that uses electrochromic layers to change tint based on sun position. These advanced materials are even more sensitive to chemical contamination than current acoustic glass, making the generic resins found in retail DIY kits even more dangerous to the internal circuitry of the windshield. Historical trends in the automotive glass industry suggest that by 2030, the traditional glass shop will have evolved into a digital calibration center. The act of pouring resin or swapping glass will be secondary to the act of software synchronization. This means that your relationship with your glass technician will be more like your relationship with a computer programmer. When you choose a professional today, you are choosing a technician who understands the digital ecosystem of your car. You are paying for the peace of mind that when you hit 70 miles per hour on a rain-slicked highway, your car's eyes are seeing the world exactly as they were engineered to. In conclusion, the potential outcomes of a $20 DIY experiment are rarely worth the risk to your primary safety cage. The data is clear. Professional intervention is the only way to ensure structural bonding, optical purity, and digital alignment. Whether you are driving a high-performance electric vehicle or a standard family crossover, your windshield is your first line of defense. Treat it with the technical respect it deserves. If you have comprehensive insurance in the United States, there is almost no financial reason to ever touch a DIY kit. Call your provider, find a certified technician, and ensure your vehicle is returned to its factory-spec structural integrity. This concludes our deep dive masterclass on auto glass integrity. We have covered the physics of impacts, the chemistry of resins, the digital requirements of ADAS, and the economic realities of the 2026 market. You now have the knowledge to make an informed decision that protects your family and your finances. But the windshield is just one part of your car's safety and value. What happens when your insurance company tries to tell you your car is a total loss over a minor fender bender? In our next deep dive, we are going to pull back the curtain on the secret algorithms insurance adjusters use to value your vehicle in 2026 and show you the exact 3 words that can stop a total loss declaration in its tracks. You will see the case studies of owners who fought back and saved their cars from the scrap heap. Do you know the hidden value of your vehicle's data log? We will reveal it all in the next part of our Car Care Secrets series.